Week 15 of the fantasy football season. His tight end starts every matchup this week, Thursday night, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Kyle Pitts, the last couple weeks, he's made a turnaround. He's going out there, he's making big plays. Last week, 90 yards receiving. And with Drake London out of the lineup, that's why he's producing as well as Kyle Pitts. But even if London's back in the lineup, I think this week he's a decent option at the Bucs. He's a start. Cade Otton is sit. He's banged up with a knee injury. He didn't practice to begin the week. Is Cade Otton, and even if he does play in this ball game and it's a decent matchup, Mike Evans possibly returning to the lineup as well for this Tampa Bay Buck team. So Otton the last few weeks, his numbers really haven't been there. He's a sit, and like I said, if Otton's out, Payne Durham's going to be in the starting lineup. And for fantasy playoffs, a backup tight end who hasn't really done much all season long is someone obviously I can't count on, so he's a sit. The more Ravens at the Cincinnati Bengals, Isaiah likely to means past Mark Andrews in the pecking order in this offense. Likely he's getting more targets. He's finding the end zone. Him and Lamar Jackson, they definitely had a good rapport going back to early last season, but injuries have kept them out on and off. He's likely over the last season and a half. But this week in a good matchup at the Cincinnati Bengals, he's a fringe option. And Mark Andrews, if he's not scoring a touchdown, he's not putting up fantasy points. And I know this Baltimore Raven team just extended him with a nice contract for Mark Andrews, and good for him, obviously. But like I said, in terms of fantasy football, he's not really been a great option. He's a sit. Mike Gesicki is sit. I know last week he found the end zone was Mike Gesicki, but even if Higgins is out in this ball game where he's in concussion protocol once again, Gesicki in a playoff game for fantasy owners, he's too inconsistent, obviously, to trust, even though this is going to be a grinded out type of ball game between these two division rivals. This Raiders at the Philadelphia Eagles, Brock Bowers, obviously he's a start each and every week, even if it's Kenny Pickett in there, quarterback this week for this Vegas Raider team. Brock Bowers, we've seen him last season in his rookie year with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell go out there and put up huge numbers. He's a matchup problem for any linebacker, safety, or corner, whoever they put on Bowers. And this week, even in a tough matchup at the Philadelphia Eagles, I still think he could go out there and produce as Brock Bowers. Like I said, he's one of the best tight ends we've seen in a long time come out in college, and he's put up some big numbers. Dallas Goedert to start. Finally, a big game it was for Dallas Goedert on Monday Night Football last week at the Los Angeles Chargers. Big first down conversions he was making in that game. Him and Jalen Hurts had a good rapport. And we know Goddard, more times than not, he's going to go out there and he could score you 10, 12 fantasy points, worst case. So this week in a great matchup versus the Vegas Raiders, I think Goddard, he goes out there, has a good ball game. On the Cardinals, at the Houston Texans, Trey McBride, he's locked in as the best tight end this season in fantasy football. I know last week he got off to a nice start, and then after that, they just shut him down. The rest of the game was the Los Angeles Rams. But this week, even in a tough matchup, once again, at the Houston Texans, Trey McBride, he's been putting up huge numbers all season long and easily the number one tight end. He's a start. Dalton Schultz a start. Last week, a touchdown was called back on a penalty on the offense. So Schultz, to me, is the number two option in this passing game for this Houston Texan team. He's a tight end that can run routes. He can make plays in the middle of the field. And obviously with defense rolling coverage a lot, obviously to Nico Collins, and rightfully so, it opens things up in the middle of the field. So Schultz, to me, this week, he's a start. Los Angeles Chargers at the Kansas City Chiefs. Rondé Gatson, he had a nice middle part of the season, but the last month of the year, the numbers really haven't been there. And this passing game as a whole, numbers have gone down. Quentin Johnston, Keenan Allen, and Rondé Gatson, their numbers are way down over the last month of the season, where even Ladd McConkey had a bad game as well last week in Philadelphia. So I think this Charger team, they like running the football a little bit more over the last few weeks here. Obviously with Hampton now back in the mix, that helps as well with him and Vidal as a good 1-2 combo in the backfield. And like I said, Gatson, he had some big ball games in the middle of the season, but I think teams adjusted to him a little bit, and he hasn't gotten much separation. And also, he was banged up with a little hip and knee area injuries, Gatson, that could be playing a part. And Travis Kelce, he's a start. I know last week, couple bad drops, and he took a big hit in one, bounced off his hands and was intercepted in that one versus the Houston Texans. But this week, I think he bounces back, Travis Kelce. We just saw Dallas Goedert go out versus defense, have a good ball game. And you rarely see Kelce have 2 games in a row where he's totally out of it and not doing much. I think this week, after a 20-10 loss versus the Texans, they bounce back this week in terms of putting points on the board. I don't know if they're going to win this game 100%, but I like Kelce as a bounce-back candidate this week, and he's a start. Buffalo Bills at the New England Patriots. Kincaid returned to the lineup last week where he had a hamstring injury. He went out there He put up good numbers for this Buffalo Bill team. This week, it's a pretty good matchup. They know they got to put points on the board. And obviously, if Buffalo loses, the division's out of reach. This week, Kincaid is the number 2 option in the passing game for this Bill team as a start. And Hunter Henry, the last few games before the bye, he's gone out there. He's putting up numbers. He's the number 2 option in this passing game, even though Drake May's the type of quarterback that spreads that football out all over the field. And Hunter Henry this week, he's a start. New York Jets. At the Jacksonville Jaguars, Mason Taylor, a fringe option. Mason Taylor, he's going out there, he's making plays some weeks, and then some weeks we don't see much from him. So he's been up and down all season long as a rookie as Mason Taylor. So this week, even in a mediocre matchup at Jacksonville, where their defense has been hit or miss this season, but like I said, possibly the third string quarter was a fringe option. Brenton Strange a start. Ever since he returned from injury, this offense is putting up more numbers. Strange has had 2 double-digit fantasy games as well, out of 3 for this Jacksonville Jaguar team. And this week in a good matchup versus a New York Jet defense that can't stop anyone, he's a start. Commanders at the New York Giants. Zach Ertz out for the season, devastating torn ACL in last week's bowl game for him. Was Zach Ertz at the Minnesota Vikings. So Bates and Sinnett, they're going to step into the lineup, maybe a 50-50 split or whatever, but these guys haven't been options all season long. They're backups. I know it's a good matchup at the Giants, but you can't trust these 2 tight ends. They sit Theo Johnson. He's a start for me in this one. Number 2 option, in my opinion, in the passing game behind Wan'Dale Robinson. Big target, especially in the red zone. And him and Jackson Dart have great rapport. So this week, I think Theo Johnson in a good matchup versus the defense in the Commanders that gave up 3 touchdowns to tight ends. 2 to Josh Oliver and 1 to Hawkinson last week. He's a start. Cleveland Browns at the Chicago Bears. Harold Fan in the start. Last week, he went off with a big game, over 100 yards, was Harold Fan, and he found the end zone. Him and Shedeur Sanders, they've been locked in since Shedor's been stepped into the starting lineup the last few weeks. And Sanders now, he's the starting quarterback the remainder of the season. So this week in a matchup where they could be chasing points early and often, and Fannon's been very consistent. He's a start. And David Njoku, we found the end zone last week, but landed awkwardly and got banged up in that ball game. So to me this week, David Njoku, even if he's back, he's definitely taking a back seat to Fannin. He's a sit. And Colston Loveland a start. Loveland's definitely showing flashes. I know this passing game of Chicago hasn't been great, and I know this Brown defense has been solid for the most part this season, but last week it was a hiccup, obviously, defensively, even though the run game is what did them in. So this week, to me, I still would trust Colston Loveland. He's a start. Carolina Panthers at the New Orleans Saints. Shatavian Sanders a sit. Sanders and this tight end position over the last couple seasons really hasn't been a factor in terms of fantasy football. So even with a good matchup at the Saints, he's a sit. Jawan Johnson a start. Number 2 option in the passing game behind Chris Olave. Physical tight end. He can run the routes. Good yard after catch guy as well. And like I always say, a young quarterback's best friend and security blanket is the tight end position. And that's exactly what it's been for Tyler Shuck. Detroit Lions at the Los Angeles Rams. Ross Stroley, he's the starting tight end. Sam Laporte out with the back injury. Brock Wright with the neck injury over the last few weeks. And we really haven't seen much out of him. So pretty much his passing game consists of St. Brown, Jamison Williams, and Tesla. At times it's going to be, and Gibbs lining up more as a wide receiver. So definitely a sit. Colby Parkinson, he's a fringe option. This offense runs through, obviously, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, Kyron Williams, and now we're seeing more quorum out of the backfield. But pretty much Colby Parkinson's been a touchdown-dependent tight end, and this week in a potential high-scoring game where we know Detroit's secondary's banged up big time with Branch now out for the season. I think Parkinson could be a decent fringe option. Indianapolis Colts at the Seattle Seahawks. Tyler Warren a start. I know a quarterback, it's possibly going to be Leonard, Brett Rypien, or even Phillip Rivers. Yes, the same Phillip Rivers who played with the Chargers and the Colts to end his career, the 44-year-old coming in for a visit. So Tyler Warren, he's the only guy you could trust in this passing game, no matter who the quarterback is. He's a big target. He's a matchup problem. I know the Seattle defense is good, but they could be chasing points all game long. And Warren, yeah, he'll be down more in my rankings this week, with obviously a big downgrade at quarterback, but definitely still a start this week, even in a tough matchup at Seattle. A.J. Bonner, he's a sit. Bonner, he's definitely had some flash games, but he's pretty much been a touchdown-dependent tight end all season long. And I know it's a good matchup, but this ball game could get out of hand early where this defense takes over, puts a lot of points on the board, and then we just see the running game of Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet go out there and have games. Green Bay Packers at the Denver Broncos. Luke Musgrave, he almost made a great diving grab last week, but it went through his hands a little bit hit the ground, and we haven't seen much out of him since Tucker Kraft's been out for the season with a torn ACL. So this week in a tough matchup at Denver Broncos, you can't trust him. He's a sit. Evan Ingram a sit. Besides the one big game versus the Commanders, he's been a bust of a free agent signing is Evan Ingram for this Denver Bronco team. And pretty much this offense is a run-first offense. Cortland Sutton getting his numbers, and also its defense and special teams playing a big part. So Ingram, he's a sit. Tennessee Titans at the 49ers. Chigga, he's a sit. We haven't seen anything from him all season long, and this passing game has been in shambles all season long. So this week, easy sit. George Kittle, easy start. He's been a beast ever since he got back in the starting lineup over a month ago is George Kittle. And this offense all of a sudden getting healthy now, and they had the bye week, I think, at the right time, and coming out of the bye, a great matchup versus a bad Tennessee team. So everything's lining up, and George Kittle this week could go out there and definitely have a big game where we just saw Fandon go over 100 yards and find the end zone versus defense last week. Minnesota Vikings at the Dallas Cowboys. TJ Hawkinson, Josh Oliver, this hits for me. I know they had touchdowns in last week's ball game. Oliver with 2, Hawkinson with 1. But these guys have been irrelevant all season long, and Hawkinson, he's been a great tight end throughout his career. But this season, with the bad quarterback play between Carson Wentz, J.J. McCarthy, and obviously Max Brosman that one game, he really hasn't done much. Is Hawkinson, he's a sit. And Oliver, he was a fluky 2-touchdown game for him last week versus a bad Commander defense. We have to see more from him. He's a sit. Jake Ferguson to start. Ferguson's been a solid tight end this season. I know his numbers have gone down, but if CeeDee Lamb's out of the lineup, he's definitely a tight end that will bump up even more in production this week. Is Jake Ferguson, a big target in the red zone. Him and Dak Prescott have great rapport and making big plays all season long. So this week in a decent matchup versus Minnesota, he would be a start. Miami Dolphins at the Steelers Monday night to close it out. Darren Waller, he's been back in the lineup over the last couple weeks. We really haven't seen much out of Darren Waller. And like I said, this week isn't the greatest of matchups where this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, I think they're going to start figuring things out. They cut Darius Slay, try to get that locker room under control a little bit, and he wasn't productive. And also with Waller, he's just been an injury-riddled tight end over the last few seasons. And even last year, he was retired and then came back this season. Besides a couple big games, he's been injured most of the season. He's a fringe option. And Pat Freiermuth, he's been a touchdown-dependent tight end, and his upside really hasn't been there all season long. So pretty much the only guys in this offense you could trust is Rodgers, depending on the matchup, Jalen Warren, and DK Metcalf. So it's tight end starts at every matchup for Week 15 of the fantasy football season.